Point City Council, Monday, November 7th, 2022 at 7 p.m. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, moving on. Item number 3 on the agenda is consent agenda. One action, topics will not be discussed unless removed from consent agenda. Items requiring the expenditures of funds are budgeted items or have been previously discussed and approved by the City Council. 3A, October 3rd, 2022, regular City Council meeting minutes. 3B, approval of claims totaling $287.04. Compromise of electronic checks 3122E to 3124E and 3127E to 3128E, and physical checks 137949 to 138027. 3C, liquor license 2023 renewals. 3D, Resolution 20-2022, accepting donation to Breezy Point Police Department. Is there any members that wish to have anything removed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve it?
So moved.
I have a motion from Councilmember Lillehei. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Ball. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Moving on to item 4, open forum. Is there anybody here at this time that wishes to address us in open forum? Anybody in open forum? If it's for a short-term rental, you will have an opportunity in the public hearing portion of it.
It kind of is and it kind of isn't.
Okay, go ahead and come forward and address us. State your name and your address.
Colleen Couts, 30760 North Lakeview Drive. There's been an ordinance that's been going on for quite a while. I started asking people, what do you think of this? I don't know what you're talking about. I made it a job to get out in the community. I tried not to disrupt people. I wouldn't go knock on doors. I wouldn't go up if people were mowing their yard. But people that were walking, people that were out in their driveway, I would stop and ask. 90% of the people that I asked about this, nobody knew about it. I've said this before at some of these meetings, nobody knew about it. The city has got to figure out a better way to let the residents of the community know about these things, because 90% of the people I talked to they're like, what? What are you talking about? Nobody knew this was happening. Nobody knew it was going on.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to address the council in open forum? Hearing none, open forum is closed. Moving on, item 5 of the agenda, mayor and city council reports and committee reports. 5A, mayor. 5A, 1, joint powers board. We did have a joint powers meeting, would have been the beginning of the month. It's always the Monday directly after the regular scheduled council meeting, so our next one will be coming this next Monday. It was a good meeting. The main focus of the meeting was to go over all the job descriptions for the chief, the assistant chiefs, the firefighters, and have those all approved. So those are all updated, reviewed by the firefighters themselves, brought to the Joint Powers Board. We then reviewed them, asked questions, any additions, changes, and then we approved those as well. So we went through all those. A couple of things, they removed the safety officer and the secretary out of job descriptions because technically there was no reason to have those. And then one of the big things that got talked about in the job descriptions is that the fire district would not allow any firefighters to serve on more than one department at a time. So moving forward, any firefighters hired would not be allowed to serve on simultaneously. So if they served for the fire district of Pequot and Breezy Point, they would not be allowed to serve on Nisswa's Fire Department or anybody else's. And that was because of conflict with calls. So what happens, you get a call on the one and you're out and the other one calls because they get a call. One of the things that came out of that is before the fire district was actually conjoined as it is now, there was one firefighter that serves on the Pequot Lakes District's department who does currently work for the Nisswa Department. And he was hired at that time by the Pequot Fire Department, knowing that they had both of that, he was on both. He has since, I believe, correct me, Administrator Chansky, because I believe you were at the fire meeting where this got brought up that I was not, but he has stated that he is going to be no longer working with Nisswa and is going to work only with the Pequot Fire District. So again, it kind of took that out of the equation, but moving forward, there would be no firefighters hired that serve on more than one department at a time. So that was a big thing that was brought up as a part of it. We do have elections coming up for the chief and the assistant chiefs. And so how that works is we take applications for that. Those applications are currently being brought in, and then they're reviewed, and then a determination is made of who would be serving in those positions. I did find out, again, through Administrator Chansky, who attended the later meeting, the fire board meeting that was scheduled on the 26th, that current chief, Nelson, has decided to retire. So that position is going to be filled by somebody new. We do have a current applicant I know of that has applied, and we could have more at this time as well. So we will have a new fire chief moving forward. I think Chief Nelson just said it was time. A lot of things going on in his life, and after 20 plus years, I believe, he decided that he was going to step down. So we will have a new fire chief. We also will potentially have a new assistant, at least one new assistant chief, as one of the current ones has stated too, that they will not be applying to seek that assistant chief's position again. So a couple of things there. I know both of them stated it had nothing to do with the changing to the district. It was more about life and things that were going on. So we'll miss Chief Nelson. He actually will be retiring. Our assistant chief will be staying on, but he won't be pursuing that assistant chief's position. Talked about fire officer pay. That did get an increase, and that makes it more consistent with what we see throughout the area in regards to what the fire officers get paid. So the Joint Powers did approve an increase in the fire officers' pay, and what that is that's your assistant chiefs, that's your chief, and that's your captains, I believe. Those all get a little extra because they go above and beyond the typical roles of what a regular firefighter would do for the district. So along with that, probably the other one that I want to bring up is that we are currently seeking requests for proposals for an independent fiscal agent for the district. So originally, when the district was formed, it was thought that potentially the city could serve as the fiscal agent depending on who the chair was. So in the district, the chair rotates every year. So right now it's Pequot Lakes who has the chair, and it's that mayor who sits as the chair of the board. This next year it'll be Breezy, that'll have the chair, and then that fiscal agent would serve dependent upon that. What we've discovered is that it's probably going to be cleaner to have an independent fiscal agent to just do all the work for the books. It doesn't get confusing for the cities. And that was something we had discussed when we were forming this, but didn't know and wanted to try it. But it's already become apparent that we need to have an independent fiscal agent. So we are seeking requests for proposals from that, and the Joint Powers Board will be taking a look at those and making a determination of who that independent fiscal agent will be. So that'll be forthcoming, but that in a nutshell probably is what we covered. Councilmember Ball, anything to add to that?
No, that covers it. Thank
I
you.
think so. There was a lot. We did cover a lot of information in that meeting, but it's going well. I think we're making good progress, and the Joint Powers Board continues to work very well together. So that's all I have regarding the Joint Powers Board. Moving on to 5B City Council members, I have 5BI Technology Committee. Councilmember Maroney, you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, short agenda, long topics. First one is website update, which we actually have an agenda item later on. Communications is a big thing about that, so we'll talk more about that when it comes to 6P. Microphones, we also talked, staff is going to be investigating a little bit more instead of the headsets, more gooseneck potentials. We're continuing to leave them on mute. Batteries are dying on us, so just wasn't the best solution for us, so we're looking down the path of replacements of those.
Perfect. Happy with that. Thank you for the report, and I look forward to hearing more about the website piece when we get to that in the agenda. 5B2, Planning Commission.
Planning
Councilmember
Commission,
Lillehei.
yep, had their meeting in, oh gosh, what month is it? In October. It was a relatively short agenda. They only had one conditional use permit that they discussed, but it was a relatively long meeting. We spent a lot of time talking about the changes to the short-term rental and how they would be impacting, because we did not go along with their recommendation. And so we had a relatively extensive discussion on that. And then we also had discussion on the criteria for issuing variances. With relatively inexperienced planning and zoning, they needed some refreshing on what constitutes basically what constitutes the basis for issuing a variance. And that all went, very well. It was a good educational session. And I didn't, David, did they ever get the training set up for them from League of Minnesota Cities?
I think Jerry's still working on that.
Still working on that? Because they're talking about having specific training for the planning and zoning on what a practical difficulty is. And it's a relatively nebulous term, but it has very specific criteria and guidelines, and we need more education on that. So that was about it.
Excellent. Thank you. Very good report. Moving on, 5B3, Park Board. Councilmember Bakken.
That's me, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Short report, but concise, if you will. The disc golf course is up and ready, and kudos to
Yes.
Joe and his team. They did exactly what they said they were going to do, and they did it in spades, marvelously. It saved a lot of money. Moving on, discussions that was chaired by the assistant administrator to my right, the one with the beard, two beards. Rats, 3. Well, that went by the wayside. And he did a masterful job of keeping the board on focus. They have they just, I wish we had this, I wish we had that, but he kept it focused. And the long and the short of it is priorities, and these are, if, number 1, a gym. Number 2, a fitness center. Number 3, a combination fitness center and a shelter in the basement like this building. I think that has some merit. Only speak of my part, from my opinion, but that has real merit, and we wish we would have done that with this building, which we didn't. A daycare center, which is very, very important, and we're so short of help for people, younger people that want to work and they need a place to take their children. The last was a pool, and that's really low on the priority for 2 reasons. Number 1, the other structure's got to be built first, and they can be built around that. However, the pool is the most costly item. And that's it. That's going to change, I'm quite sure. I have nothing else to report. Thanks for the time.
All right, thank you. And I would assume the priorities were in reference to the potential of a community center and what the priorities within that center would be, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. excellent.
Exactly.
Thank you.
And that's still
Yeah.
a ways down the road, folks.
Yep. But it sounds like there's discussion continuing, so that's good. That's what the council asked the park board to do, so we appreciate that work. And I do want to echo what Councilmember Bakken said about Joe and the guys, outstanding. I commented to him before the meeting started that I thought it
Yes.
looked outstanding. I just recently was over there and took a little walkabout. I thought it looked great. The parking lot looks excellent. You guys have done outstanding work, so please pass that along to your guys, because we really appreciate the efforts on behalf of the city, so. All right, moving on. Item 6 in the agenda, administrator and staff reports. Item 6A, public hearing consideration of proposed ordinance 2022-05. Administrator Chansky, would you give us some background, please?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Proposed ordinance 2022-05. This came out of your October 3rd meeting, where you considered the Planning Commission's recommendation on short-term rentals and specifically their zoning. And after your discussion, you directed staff to bring you back an ordinance amendment that made 3 amendments to the city code, 2 to chapter 115. Again, that's the new chapter. That's the short-term licensing chapter of the ordinance that you adopted in July to go effect on January 1st of 2023. So there's 2 amendments in there. One is to restrict the number of short-term rental licenses that will be issued at any given time to 60. Also to include further elements that needed to be tested for when it comes to well water testing. And then the 3rd amendment was to chapter 153, which is the zoning chapter of the code. And that was to repeal all current zoning regulations on short-term rentals and replace them with the inclusion of short-term rentals as regulated by chapter 115 in all zoning districts. So it'd be a permitted use with a permit. And that is what this ordinance amendment does represent. And so, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think that's at this time. Unless you have any immediate questions for me, I would encourage you to open the public hearing on this proposed ordinance amendment. And then following receiving public comment, then obviously you have your time to deliberate and then take any action on ordinance 2022-05 that you desire.
Thank you, Administrator Chansky, for that update. Are there any specific questions at this time from the council? All right, hearing none, I'm going to then move into the public hearing section of this. Again, what I ask is that if you're going to address the council, please come forward, state your name, your address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. We will keep track of that. If you are somebody sitting in the audience waiting to come to address the council regarding these amendments in the proposed ordinance, and pretty much somebody in front of you said the same things, we ask that you not come up and speak to the same comments. In other words, try to keep from being redundant. If you have other things you want to add, absolutely, we ask that you please come forward and speak to those pieces. We will listen to what you have to say, and then we will go from there. So with that, I am going to formally open the public hearing now for this proposed amendments to ordinance 2022-05. Is there somebody who'd like to step forward and address the council at this time? Please do so. State your name and your address when you come to the podium, please.
Colleen Couts, 30760 North Lakeview Drive. Following up on what I discussed previously, 90% of the people I asked were not for this. They were opposed to opening up to into the residential communities. This ordinance doesn't, first of all, I don't like how it was done with segmenting. We'll do and this is the phrases I've heard here, the how-tos in July, and then we'll do the where-to somewhere months down the line, because I feel the how-tos are very relevant to the where-tos. I live in the community where our lot sizes are very small. They're bing, 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 one right next to the other. This ordinance does nothing to prevent one household, and it's happened down the street from me, one household from having a VRB over here and having a VRB over here. The house down the street from me has it all around them. There's 3 all surrounding this house. This does nothing to prevent that from happening to a person. If you got a VRB over here and you got one over here and you want to sell your house, good luck. The other thing is it handicaps the 60 number permit handicaps the seller, because what if you want to throw in the towel and say, okay, I've had it, I'm done, I'm going to either rent or I'm going to sell to somebody that's going to rent. They'll come to the city and they'll say, sorry, we've already given out all 60 permits. So they've crippled the homeowner in that regard. I've heard the phrase a lot about, not being able to tell people what they can and cannot do with their property. Well, you're telling number 61, 62, 63, et cetera. And we're told what to do with our properties all the time. You can't do this. You can only put a fence up this high. You can only do this and that. Another thing I was a little disappointed in was, when Tom made a comment about the planning commission talked about this, I didn't see it on the agenda, so I didn't go to that planning commission meeting. I don't know, so I don't really know what was discussed. I thought I was at the other meeting, though, when the planning commission did consider it. They asked a lot of very good questions, a lot of very intelligent questions, had a really good conversation on it. It came back to the city. I don't think it was even given 30 seconds of consideration what they had recommended. It was pretty much not even, I felt like it was not very much considered. Getting back to, like I said, nobody, 90% of the people I talked to didn't know about it, 90% didn't want it, and I feel like the city has got to figure out a way, something as impactful as this, on a community, to let people know about it. I feel like the bare minimum responsibility on the city's part of getting the word out that's maybe what was done. I can't think of anything else that I probably haven't already said before. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to address us in the public hearing? Come forward. Hi. State your name and your address, please, into the microphone.
Sure. My name is Mara Lundquist. I live at 30505 Airport Road, across the street. Looking at the stipulations in regards to the revisions of the ordinances that had to do with pre-existing properties that are grandfathered in, it seems as there a little bit of ambiguity in regards to how you're going to process those folks that are already doing business, legitimately doing business, under the way the wording is written, because it says you cannot get application without having, already doing business. Are there going to be stipulations in place to, I don't want to say to grandfather in, because that's not the word I'm looking for, but to legitimately apply for licensure under?
Basically, what we're looking at doing is currently there are 37 that operate in this city.
Right, and I am one of them.
Under Crow Wing
Yep.
County's ordinance.
Yes.
Okay? So what will happen is when the applications become available, those current ones will be notified
Okay.
that they'll have the opportunity to come in and to apply to receive a permit. So they will get a letter from the city
Okay.
stating that the permits will be available and you need to come in, and it is on a first-come, first-served
Sure.
basis.
No, I understand
But we
that.
are telling those 37 that they have the opportunity to come in and get that permit.
Okay, so we will be notified.
Yes, you will.
Okay, so
Yep.
if we're legitimately listed with Crow Wing County,
Yes.
we will have an opportunity to apply.
Yes, you will, because
Okay.
we're aware of who those are.
Okay.
We have that list.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else who wishes to address us in the public hearing? State your name and your address, please.
Roland Voller, 30522 North Lakeview Drive, Breezy Point. Okay, I was also informed about this ordinance thing and not being able to duplicate what someone else says. It's hard to really state my position in a sense. Okay, I was told that Crow Wing County has left out so many applications for this, and the city of Breezy Point has to abide by that, or their hands are more or less tied. Okay, now I was also told that the city of Ironton has flat refused to do it, and they won't allow any applications in their city limits. So why cannot Breezy Point do the same thing?
that's a valid point that you make.
And I would like it if that would really be looked into closely. And I would also like, and this is repeating, I guess, some more of the things that are going on here somehow be brought out to the residents. I mean, we pay taxes and we pay doggone high taxes. So I would like to be informed a little bit better somehow or another, even if it's just a text that goes out or an email or whatever. But I would like to know a little bit more about what is going on. You know, for instance, this here community center thing. I didn't hear anything about that until I started seeing signs up. And so I started asking people, you know, what the heck is that about? You know, I didn't get anything from the city council, just signs. So I would like a little bit better notification of what's going on if possible. Thank you.
Thank you. State your name and your address, please.
Thomas DeTunk, 30582 North Lakeview Drive. I just have two questions for the council. One is, why was the recommendations from the city manager, they made the recommendation not to increase anything, right? Isn't that the way it was?
They made if you're talking about the zoning, planning and zoning
Yes.
commission, they made the recommendation to leave the zoning ordinances as they were written currently, which would mean then that 37 people operating in the city were illegally operating in current, even though Crow Wing County had given them a permit to operate in our city.
Okay.
So their recommendation was to leave the zoning ordinance as is, to not make changes to it at all.
So then why did the city not go along with that?
The main
council.
main reason that we made the decision to do what we did was to try and find a happy medium. And that's the reason we came up with the 60 that we currently have stated as a proposed amendment to this ordinance, because the 37 that are currently operating are permitted by Crow Wing County. We would then have to take punitive action individually against each one of those people and shut them down because they were illegally operating within the city because they didn't meet the zoning ordinance. So we're trying to find a happy medium here to where we can allow them to continue to operate rather than take massive amounts of taxpayers' dollars and staff time to run these people down, take punitive action against them and bring them to court to have them shut down because they're operating illegally in our city.
My next question then is, why do we have to increase it?
Because we felt that there are other people in the city that do want to have a short-term rental. We've heard plenty from other constituents that are in favor of having short-term rentals in the city that would like to be able to have a short-term rental, knowing that there are 37 that currently operate in the city and that they most likely are going to apply for a permit, just as the constituent that spoke a couple people prior. That then takes that 37, and we felt that we had to give an opportunity to others that may feel that they wanted to operate in the city. One thing I will point out too is one of the things that this council talked about the last time was that this is for basically a 3-year window that we're going to take a look at it. We want to gather data. We want to find out. I think you're going to find that the council is going to want to revisit it in the future and ask the city staff to come back and say, what are you finding out with what we've got going on? Because I think so we're seeking a compromise.
Has the city ever looked at what happens with those rentals through the police department? Do they get more calls to those rentals?
We've got a lot of data to support many things. That's been gone over in the past. There's been very, very few complaints on short-term rentals in this city. So there's been a few, and I can't say that there hasn't, but they're very, very far and few between. And yes, we do keep records and track that. And again, with this ordinance moving forward, if it's approved and moved forward by the council, we will continue to track the data on that. And there are punitive pieces put in place if people are not doing what they're supposed to do in regards to following the ordinance. And citizens are going to have the ability to be able to take action by calling in and letting us know that, hey, there's something going on with this ordinance or with this short-term rental. So we'll have the ability to be able to look at that as well.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the council? Anybody else? State your name and your address, please.
Good evening. My name is Jean Hummel. My address is 30456 North Lakeview Drive. We moved up here 3 years ago, so we're new to the community yet. I have never even seen an ordinance of short-term rental. Didn't even know anything about it. We moved out of the cities. This is heaven up here. We love it up here. Each year, it seems like the traffic gets worse. They need to either put speed bumps or a speed limit on Lakeview Drive, because those people fly on that road. And my gut feeling is,
Ma'am, can I stop you? That what you're asking or talking about here is not in.
yes, it is.
Okay, continue then.
A lot of them is from the short-term rentals.
Okay.
When you have a pickup, in the bed of the pickup are 12 young men driving Lakeview Drive, bar hopping. They lose one or two of them along the way. They end up walking past our place, asking us for a ride home to where they're renting. I don't approve of this short-term rental. The other thing is, I want to know, if one person has a short-term rental, can he have more than one?
If he has the permit to do so, yes. But he needs to have a permit, and there's a limited amount of permits.
Okay.
And each
well,
one is a separate permit.
I personally know one person that has two places. My next thing is, I was reading through some of the notes last night, and what I got out of this, and tell me if I'm wrong, that if for some reason Breezy Point Police or somebody is notified that there's a problem there, they have 1 hour that somebody from either the owner or the manager of that short-term rental has 1 hour to get to that place so that they can take care of this. I know for a fact 2 or 3 of the rentals are in Breezy Point here. Those people are 3 to 4 hours away.
Right, so it would be their requirement to make sure there's somebody that is responsible for that if they're not going to be present.
And if, so if they're signing up for this permit, they get their permit, they know this, what happens if they are not able to get there within their 1 hour time limit?
Well, then it becomes a violation, and that's considered one of the strikes against them. And if you read over the ordinance or look through it, which
You
it sounds
get
like you did,
3,
you
yeah.
know that there's a rolling period of time, and they have so many incidents, and if it reaches that point, then their permit is rescinded.
And I go back to what Tom had said too. I think 60 is a lot. I see that you have 37. Could you put it 45 or 50 rather than 60?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the council as a part of this public hearing? I'll ask again. State your name and your address, please.
Jerry Schroden, Breezy Point Timeshare. The changing of the ordinances for the different zoning districts. I'm questioning that a little bit because of the fact that people that came up here and moved into an R1 and invested in an R1 home are all of a sudden suddenly now potentially in a situation where they could end up with short-term rentals on any or all sides of them. And not a major concern on the front page, but in the city of St. Cloud, over in the State College area, a big chunk of that area was historical district. And then they had a previous mayor that thought rentals would be a great idea. And it turned out where many of those properties turned rental. And right now, I don't think there's any one of us that would want to walk from anywhere in St. Cloud or even over at Technical High School where the new city hall is and go to into the campus of St. Cloud after dark. I think people, when they move into an R1 district, I think deserve the sanctity of being in an R1 district.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the council in this public hearing? State your name and your address, please.
John Ziem, 8309 Eagle Lane. Is there going to be a website we can go to see if the houses across the street are legal rentals under this? You got 60 applications. Where are we going to be able to find that out?
Well, you'll be able to come to the city, or we will have some things posted on our website that will give you information on how you can find out who is a short-term rental.
So you're not going to have anything posted on the website with the names of them? You're going to have to come in or call somebody?
Potentially. But we could take a look at potentially having something on the website as well. That's work in progress as a part of this process as well. We actually will be addressing updating of our website tonight, and that's one of the things I'm sure we'll
It'd be nice to have it on there so you could see if
Sure.
it is a legal rental to start
Yep.
with.
Yeah, if I could interject.
Yeah, fire, Tom.
Because they have to have a county license
Right.
first. All of the county licenses are on a map that is available right now. So you can look on the map in the county license. It'll show you exactly where those 37 locations are in Breezy Point right now, today.
But the city's not going to have it
The
up
city
on
will
theirs.
the city will require that they have a county license first, so they will be documented on the map.
But Breezy Point isn't going to put it on their
Then
website?
it will be redundant information. To have a county map and a city map, they're exactly the same thing.
Okay.
So you can go to if you go to the county, and we'll have a link to the county map so you can identify which ones are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm sure we're gonna have a piece on the website where we'll have information about short-term rentals, about application processes, about a link to the county's current map, so you can see where all those places are listed within there, just like Tom said. So there'll be a link, so you could click on that link. That will take you then from our website to the counties
So there
to
will
show
be
you that
something on-
map,
So
so
there will
you
be
can see.
something on the Breezy Point website?
Oh,
that you just click
absolutely.
on
We're gonna
to get
have a
to
whole
it.
piece of information on short-term rentals on the website for applications, deadlines. We'll have some of the information about the ordinance posted on there so people understand what it is. And while it's on there, yes, I will state, at any time, you can contact City Hall and talk directly to our city administrator or our city planner, and they
It's
would
just
be
kind
more
of
than
hard
happy.
at 10 o'clock at night to call the city office and find
Well.
out when you have problems.
Yeah.
Well, when you have problems, there'll be a hotline or a line available that you will make a direct call to, and that
Is that going to be? on your-
Administrator Chansky.
And I just wanted to add, if your concern is if one will be next door to you, the ordinance requires that a property owner, all their adjacent neighbors, they will be given the 24-hour contact information.
It's a requirement.
So if you're concerned that, like, I don't know if the neighbor next door to me is one, you will be informed if a neighbor of yours has a short-term rental.
That's going to be something new then? It's not
Yes.
currently, right?
No, it's not currently. That's a thing that we've added so that the property owners surrounding that short-term rental are made aware of that. And that'll be the responsible of that short-term rental holder to do that to the surrounding property owners.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
For example, if it's 2 o'clock in the morning and they got a big party going on next door, you just take your piece of paper and you'll say, call this number, call that number, and you don't get a hold of the the sheriff, you don't get a hold of the county, you don't get a hold of the city, you get a hold of the property manager, and he has 1 hour to shut that down. Otherwise, he gets a violation.
If
3
they
violations, he loses his license.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Yep.
Is there anybody else that wishes to address the council as a part of this public hearing? I'll ask again, is there anybody else at this time who wishes to address the council in this public hearing? I now declare the public hearing is closed. And I will go to the next step, which is for the council. Council members, any questions, comments that you'd like to make after hearing the information addressed from the public?
I'll start.
Councilmember Watkins.
I don't know where to start.
I could start.
Listening to the testimony tonight, this city has always had a problem with communication. We've got new people on board, and there's going to be new people on board January 23. I think you'll see a change coming then, speaking only from my personal opinion. You know, the manager, we call a manager, it's like you try to call a county. Good luck. You'll be dead before they get a message to the police department here. Bad system. Very bad system. I see some real merit to just doing away with it. No rentals, period. It costs money to the city. It taxes the staff. I see no real benefit out of a short-term rental other than appeasing the minority of who want that. There's a problem with them, and North Lakeview Drive is a classic example. I've been involved in that one in 2021. I was ashamed, and I've made statements to this council ever since of what went on. I won't use anybody's names, but it was a fact, and it was atrocious. I'm ashamed of what went on there at 3 o'clock in the morning. That said, lastly, I don't see here, and I'll direct this to Tom. Tom, we talked about penalties, $1. $500 was discussed.
Yeah.
First penalty. Second penalty, $1,000.
Yes.
And you lose your permit.
On the third.
Runs with that.
On the third.
On the third penalty, yeah.
Third, yes.
The third.
That's
Third strike.
Is it?
But that won't be in the ordinance, Councilmember Bach, and that's part of the punitive,
That's part of
that's
the,
the administrative fees, so
Enough
that,
said.
that does not get put in
Enough
the
said.
ordinance.
Enough
But
said.
it's a valid point that you bring up about the fact that if somebody does get a violation, it's not going to be cheap for them. They will pay that. So we did bring that up too.
I wanted to make sure that was in there.
Yeah.
And I see merit to the 60. I fought, and a lot of other people here did, to get that number at a maximum of 60. So if the 37 don't come in, whatever, that's their problem. I don't know what else to say. I'm so tired of rental properties. Sick and tired of it. And I think there's a lot of other people here that are too, and I have nothing else to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Bakken. Councilmember Maroney, you said you sounded like you
Sure.
wanted to
Yep.
talk, so I'll turn it over to you for the next go-around.
I can talk here. This has been going on since 2020, the end of 2020. We had 3 public hearings in 2021 to ask public opinion on it, and my recollection was do not expand it. There are certainly some cases that it would be favorable. I believe there are some cases that were presented on that. I know a lot of people are concerned about who's going to be renting, who's going to be coming in the short-term rental, and I had a lengthy conversation with one individual, so it's only one, but they do a lot of screening themselves, the Airbnbs, the VRBOs. They want to make sure that they get a qualified person who's going to rent from them, so they're not renting to just Joe Schmo, and that they're respectable people. That was only one. I don't have a partake in it. I don't know that history. However, when we start talking about the expansion because currently, for those not aware, it's we have always had short-term rental in commercial, resort commercial, and R4 district. That is what the P&Z had forwarded on to us not to change that, not to expand on that. And that's where I go back to is when we passed the licensing, I asked if it would be expanded upon, and it said no. And at this time it wasn't, but it was up to the council to expand on it. Now we're here, we're talking about that expansion. I'm in favor of not to expanding it, to leave it to those 3 zones, to test out our licensures, to test out the website, to test out how things go for the next 3 years. Not to expand it and then pull it back, but to see where it goes for the first 1, 2, 3 years, and then to further expand it. I don't think it's wise of us to let it go wild and then draw the reins back. I say let's focus in where it's at today with the resort commercial, and the R4 district, having our licensure in, having the fees in, having the penalties in, having the due process in, and then we can discuss about expanding it. How were those items addressed with the current situations? I'm in favor of why we came up with 60. We had to put a limit somewhere, but I think that limit needs to come back to where we actually discussed about those areas. Does it cause heartache with administration? Absolutely it does. The county won't work with us. We can't go to the county and say, only these 3 districts, so don't work about those. The county's just going to license them, then they're going to come to us and find out that they can't get a license. That is an administrative issue, and I agree with it, and I feel sorry for that, but I think that's where we still have to be.
Okay. Councilmember Lillehei.
Well, one of the issues, to get to Mike's point, is we had short-term rentals limited to just those few areas. The problem was nobody was licensed, nobody was operating short-term rentals within those districts. They were all outside those districts. And that is why we had to reconsider what planning and zoning said, because it didn't change the status quo. I mean, we had a bunch of, basically 37 operating in the city, and they were all operating illegally. There was nobody that was operating legally, which is why we said, okay, if we're going to have control over this, we need to say, okay, we're going to allow these anywhere in the city, and we are going to control them. And we have a lot more control over how they actually get operated. One of the big examples that was just brought up tonight is if they are getting out of control, calling the sheriff, it's going to take him hours to get there. But if you have excuse me, if you have a number for them to call, and all the adjacent property owners have that number, that is calling directly to either the owner or the owner's agent. And that person that they call has to answer that phone, not an answering machine. It has to be a physical person answering the phone, and they have to shut down that party, the problem that is being occurred within 1 hour. And if they don't do it, and we verify that is going to be a strike against that property owner. And you get 3 strikes within 18 months.
Can I make a comment?
No.
No, you may not, ma'am. I'm sorry, your opportunities for comment have passed.
But he hadn't talked, he hadn't spoke before.
Yeah. Oh,
He spoke
it-
after I spoke.
yeah,
So I
but it-
didn't know that I wanted to make that comment.
It's my turn to speak now.
Yes, you had your opportunity, ma'am.
I did.
So the person that owns that short-term license has to be able to respond to a complaint like that within 1 hour. And you get 3 complaints within 18 months. The county only has a 1 year. We have an 18-month year and a half look back. 3 complaints within that time period, verified complaints, they will lose their license, and then they will not be able to operate within the city of Breezy Point, even though they may still have a valid county license. Once their city license is revoked, and then they have to wait to reapply. Which is why we had to basically go that direction and not follow the planning and zoning recommendation. Just one other comment, and it has to do with what is proposed in the, for the changes. Wait a minute, let me find it here. Under the proposal, and this is basically just would be a change to what we have proposed here, under 3H, the proposal, okay, I lost it. It has to do with the water testing. We have documentation shall be provided that the well has been tested for arsenic, mercury, lead, and sulfate. Mercury, lead, and sulfate was added. We need to add in manganese, because I talked to the state licensing for wells, and that was one of their concerns. Mercury, lead, and sulfate, those are also 10-year items, but manganese does not show up, and they want it to be looked at. So if we could just add in manganese into H3. But other than that, as far as how we're implementing it, I think that's basically the most logical thing to do. And then with our more restrictive oversight that we're going to have compared to what the county has, I think we're going to be in good shape. So at the end of a 3-year trial period, that we will have a good idea as to how well it's working. And as the mayor said, with the 37 that have been operating, we've only had a couple complaints. So I don't expect that there will be large problems. Many cases, there's a short-term rental going on next door and they don't even know it. So that's all I got.
Councilmember Ball.
Well, a lot has been said already. I lean towards more what Tom, you have said. And like Michael stated, we've been working on this since 2020. There were a number of workshops just to get the draft of the ordinance prepared. Then we did have the public hearings. I hear you about communication, and I know the administrator hears it too, and so I'm sure we'll be working on ways to do that. One of the ways is the sign that we put out there. That has been, I think, helpful in at least notifying of meetings and things that are coming up. But yes, there could be better ways to communicate things like this. Unfortunately, it does take listening to the meeting sometimes to know what's going on, or going to the website and opening up the packet to see what's going on. It's one of the reasons I got involved and ran for city council, so I would know what's happening in the city, and I know that doesn't work for everyone, and so there can be better ways, like push notifications, like emails or texts or something, but those people would have to reach out and agree to that. Like they would have to give us their phone number if we were going to do something like that too. As far as the short-term rentals, I mean, I'm in favor with not just restricting like some areas of the city to just 4 times per year. It doesn't seem like it was working in the first place. Those individuals with those residents were still operating short-term rentals outside of the restrictions we had in place, and it was very hard to enforce. the existing ordinance, which is why we have proposed these changes, which will give the city much more control over what's going on and will give the residents much more information about those short-term rentals. Again, I agree with Tom that we don't see a lot of complaints. Yes, there may be one or two houses, and that's probably always going to be the case. But, I mean, I didn't know there was 37 short-term rentals in the city. We certainly don't hear about them in the city. So I'm in favor of moving forward with the changes that have been proposed in the draft that's in front of us today.
Thank you, Councilmember Wall. That brings to me. All very good comments by the council, all very good comments by the public. I think when I look at it, I try to see the big picture, and I've tried to do that as much as possible throughout my time as the mayor. And I think the challenge is, where's the compromise? Where do we get to a balance? And that's coming from a guy that grew up here. Now, I spent my whole life here, born and raised in the south end of Big Pelican Lake. Saw this place when it was nothing compared to what it is now. Okay? It was what? Didn't even have it. It wasn't even incorporated. Okay? So to say that there's been, changes, absolutely there has. Are they going to continue? Yes, they are. This city is growing whether you want it to or not. Whether you wish it could stay small like it always has been, I don't think that's going to happen. The people are coming to this area for a reason. And the short-term rentals are kind of a product of some of that, because people also see this as an area to invest in. I can buy a property up here, I can turn around and I can put it out as a short-term rental, and then maybe when I retire in 20 years, I'll have the place paid for. Because we all know it's not cheap to live here either. And so they're trying to find ways to make it go as well. And I think the other piece that we have to think about is the economic aspect of it. For some people that are doing these short-term rentals, this is an economic thing for them. In other words, they make their livelihood from that. They've done it not because they want to invest in it for a retirement, but they've done it for a business. And so it is economic. And we all know that Breezy, economics are something that helps us tremendously in any way. So are there challenges to that? I agree 100% they are. Was it, in my mind, the 60 is a compromise. And I also believe, honestly, that this council has the ability to go back at any time and revisit this if an issue gets to be out of hand. It's exactly why I think it's important we have the data that we're going to be able to collect through the permits, through the incident reports, through any follow-ups that we have to do, that we're going to have on record and can be brought back to the council to say, we've got a problem with this, we need to change something. Now, to Michael's point, which it's a good point, let's not expand and then contract if we see a problem, and I get that. My challenge with that was that we currently have 37 that operate illegally within this city because Crow Wing County has allowed them to have a permit. And they're not going to change their way of doing things. They're still going to give out their permits whether we want them to or not. And so, yeah, are they going to come to the city and then maybe they potentially can't get a permit because they're not in the right area? Then we create this big fight between us and Crow Wing County, and we've already tried to go down that road with them. You're not going to be very successful. We're the small guys on the totem pole. They're above us. They supersede us in regards to the government aspect. It's just the way it is, folks. So I think at the end of the day, what we're looking at is a way to kind of get to a compromise to allow these 37 to operate. I also looked at it from this perspective, and you said, and Michael made the comment about administrative pain. I think about the time and the staff cost and if we decide that we're going to keep it as is and we're going to go after these 37 and we're going to shut them down, we have to take each one of them individually and go through the process with them. That is very costly. Not only in time, but in money. And so I factored that in when I thought about this. Because I can tell you honestly that when this all started, I was in favor of, we leave it as it is, we don't make any changes, we leave it 4 times a year, But the more I looked at it and the more I thought about it, the more I realized somehow because we've got Crow Wing County sitting there going, we're not going to change. Well, what do we do then as a city? Now the comment was brought up by one of the citizens to say, let's go Ironton's route and just shut it down completely, which that's potential. The thing is we've always had short-term rentals. We've had an ordinance for short-term rentals for, I don't even know how far it goes back. It goes back a long ways. So we have a history already of having short-term rentals in Breezy Point. So the precedent's been set, it's there. And to now just take that out of there with what we know is happening, I don't think that bodes well for the city either. So when I look at what we did and the pieces that we put in here to amend this, I think it's a good place to start and move forward with. I still believe that there's a factor that you can come back and change it. I also think that when you see 60 spread out in the city, some people, Councilmember Ball said she didn't even realize we had 37 of them operating right now. Okay? And I live in a residential area. My house is in a residential area. I could very easily have a short-term right next to me. But I trust in the fact that what we're going to put in place is going to work. That's part of what we have to do. So I'm in favor of moving forward with what we have here. It may not be perfect, but I think it's the best that we can do at this time to be able to move forward and to be able to try and do it. And the big thing for me is the county. That really is they're not going to change. They're going to continue to do what they do. And we're going to be forced to have to deal with it. So,
Mr. Mayor, quick question if I may have to you, because I know we have an 8 o'clock cutoff that we got to do here.
no, we're going to do it after this. So we're going to come to a conclusion on this.
You bring up that the county's not going to play ball with us about which area. What happens on the 61st applicant?
So the county, when they come to us, and that's what we've talked to them about a little bit already. We've had some comments. I actually spoke to an outgoing commissioner of our district and let him know about that situation too. So I don't disagree with that either. I see what you're saying, and your point's taken.
Thank you.
I just think that, I don't know which ways, I think where we're going now is the best way to go and give it a try and let's see what happens. And if there has to be a change made, I think I trust in the fact that this council has the ability to do that moving forward. So, any other comments or from the council at this point?
Take our break. I've got one more comment I'd like to make, but we'll do it after the break.
All right. So you have one more comment. So that means I can't get to the conclusion of this. All right. So,
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
if the 8 o'clock isn't like a hard, if you
I
want
know
an
it's
extra
not.
5
That's-
minutes, if you want an extra
I
5 minutes
understand
to
that.
finish this item,
That's-
you can finish your item.
That's what I was working towards. Thank you, Administrator.
The comment I'd have is really short. It has to do with Colleen's comment about she didn't know that what I was speaking in planning and zoning wasn't on the agenda because I was speaking to the short-term rental under the council liaison report, just like I speak to planning and zoning under the planning and zoning liaison report. Okay, and that way it doesn't show up on the agenda, but we did have a relatively long comment period on it. You can go to the video on YouTube and you can see what we had to say. It probably went on for about half hour, 45 minutes, something like that. The comments back and forth. So that's all I had to say.
And I do, and I didn't bring that up because I was thinking about the short-term rentals, but as far as the communication is, trust me, we work day in and day out trying to figure out how we can communicate with these citizens of this city better.
Yeah.
I can tell you honestly, one of the reasons that I ran for mayor originally was part of that. Because I didn't feel the citizens were being communicated enough with. But it's a challenge, I will tell you, after being here, because there's an old adage, and maybe I'm going to be a little out of turn, but I'm just going to be honest with everybody. My dad had an old saying. He said, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. What that means is we can put out as much information as we can possibly fathomably put out there. But the people have to be able to be willing to go to the places where we have the information, which is websites, which is, and I know that maybe it's a pain to call the city hall, but if you have a question about something or you want information on something, we have staff here that serve you. They're here to serve you, the people of this city. If you have a question, they're there to take those questions and answer them for you. I would highly encourage you to do that. That doesn't mean we're not going to continue to work hard to put the information out there so people can see it. It's just like the point made about 3 public hearings we had on our ordinance throughout the summer. We had information out on it. That's put out on our website. It's put in the papers. It's put everywhere. That's a requirement by law to do that. So the information is there for the people to get a hold of. I just encourage all of you to take the opportunity to just look for it a little bit. Engage in that process to be understanding of what's going on. Listen to the videos of the council meetings. Listen to the videos of the planning commissions. They're all there and available for everybody. So with that, that's the last comment I have. What I'd like to do now, before we take our little break here, is hearing no further comments, do I have a motion to accept the ordinance as amended? 2022-05 as amended.
So moved.
I have a motion from Councilmember Ball. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Councilmember Lillehei. Is there any further discussion?
Clarification, when you say amended, is that adding the manganese?
Manganese,
one?
yes.
Yes, the manganese into it. That's why I said amend it, because that one word was added.
Right.
Checking.
Yep.
Further discussion, just briefly.
Yes?
I know all you folks know where I stand. I dislike them. I detest them. But I do think I've changed from yes to no to yes to no to yes to no. But after listening to deliberations from my colleagues, I feel there is ample protection in what's going to be voted on and a short enough time frame where this city will be able to address in the first year any problems.
Yes.
I'm done. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, we will now take a short 2-minute recess. We need to do that for our recording purposes, so we will be back in session at 8:10.